Here is a number that shouldn't be possible. You can hire a contractor, watch the job fall apart, file a complaint, get the state to strip that contractor's license off the wall, and win. And after all of that, the check the state cuts, you can still be less than half of what you lost. Same case. You did everything right. The recovery is capped at $30,000. And for a lot of homeowners, that's the smaller number. Today we open the file on why. So let's be specific about who this is for. You signed a contract. You handed over a deposit, maybe to re-roof the house, maybe to redo the kitchen, maybe to pour a foundation. The contractor started, or maybe never really did. Then the texts slowed down. The crew stopped showing up. The permit was never pulled, or the work that got done is failing. And now the phone just rings. You're standing in a half-finished house doing the math on money that's already left your account. And the question underneath every other question is simple. Is my money just gone? In Arizona, there is a specific answer. It's a state program built for exactly this moment. But the answer has conditions, and a ceiling, and a clock, and almost nobody knows its shape until they're already inside it. So here's what we're going to do. By the end, you'll know exactly how much money this fund can actually return to you. The hard dollar ceiling in the statute, no guessing. You'll know the 3 doors you have to walk through in order before the fund will even look at your claim. And you'll know the 2-year clock that quietly runs the whole time. 3 doors, 1 ceiling, 1 deadline. Let's start with what this thing even is, because your first instinct about it is probably wrong. It's called the Residential Contractors Recovery Fund. Arizona runs it through the Registrar of Contractors, the ROC. The idea is straightforward. When a licensed residential contractor takes your money and leaves you with damages, and you can't collect from them directly, the state can pay you out of a shared pool. And here's where most people guess wrong. When you hear state fund for ripped-off homeowners, you probably picture something perpetually broke. An empty account, a program that exists on paper and pays nobody. Reasonable guess. Wrong one, at least here. This fund is financed by the contractors themselves. Every time a contractor renews a license or applies for a new one, they pay an assessment into the pool. That's set out in the statute, Section 32 A.R.S. 31. It's not taxpayer money, and it's not the contractor's own bond. It's an industry-funded pool. And it has money in it. According to the Arizona Auditor General's audited report, the fund's balance stood at just over $27.5 million as of June 30th, 2024. $27,569,801 to be exact. And in that same fiscal year, it actually paid out judgments totaling more than $5.5 million. So this is not a dead letter. The money is real, it's audited, and it moves. That matters. Because the problem you're about to run into is not the fund is empty. It's something else entirely. First question, are you even eligible? The fund is narrow on purpose. At its core, it's for one person, an owner who lives in the home as their primary residence. The statute, Section 32-1132, stretches that to a few close ownership forms where someone still actually lives there. An LLC or a living trust holding the house the owner occupies, some qualifying lessees, and an HOA for its common areas after the builder hands it over. The exact conditions for those are on screen. But if you own and live in the home, you're the center of this. And the contractor has to have been properly licensed at the moments that count. At signing, at first payment, at the start of work. Now, just as important is who is shut out. Suppliers, subcontractors, laborers, other commercial entities, not eligible. This is not a tool for the plumbing supply house that didn't get paid. And if the property isn't your primary residence, a rental, a flip, you're outside the door too. This is a homeowner protection, full stop. Okay. Say you're eligible. Now come the 3 doors, and they only open in order. Door 1. You file a formal complaint with the ROC against the contractor, and that complaint has to actually result in the license being suspended or revoked. Not just filed. It has to land. The state has to take action against that license. That's the administrative route. And that revoked license is your key to the fund. Door 2. Before the fund, You go after the contractor's license bond. Every licensed contractor carries one. You file a claim against that bond first and get a final determination on it. The fund is designed to sit behind the bond, not in front of it. Door 3. Only now do you file against the fund itself, and only against a licensed residential contractor. And remember, whatever you recover from other sources, the bond, anything else, gets deducted from what the fund will pay. It is the last door, not the first. So you make it through all 3 doors. Here's the turn. The maximum the fund will pay for any one residence is $30,000. That's it. That's the number in the statute, Section 32-113201, subsection D per residence. There's also an aggregate cap. The fund will only pay out $200,000 total against any single contractor's license, no matter how many homeowners that contractor burned. So if a bad operator hit 10 families, that pool doesn't stretch far. And the fund doesn't just hand you $30,000 for the asking. It pays actual damages, defined tightly. The reasonable cost of completing the contract and repairing the defective work, minus the part of the contract price you never paid. The award can't exceed what it actually takes to finish and fix. No net gain. You can't profit off the fund. And except for a contested appeal up at the Superior Court level, it won't cover your attorney's fees. There's one bright spot, and it's narrow. If the contractor took a deposit and did no work at all, that deposit is recoverable, plus 10% a year in interest. But even that is still capped at $30,000. Now let me show you the gap. And to be completely clear, this next number is our own illustration, not a real person's case. We built it to make the ceiling visible. Say you have $52,000 in real, provable damage to finish and repair your home. You run the entire gauntlet. You win. The fund pays its maximum, $30,000. 52 minus 30. You are still $22,000 in the hole. On a claim you won completely, the ceiling didn't move because your loss was bigger. It never moves. And then there's the clock. 2 clocks, really. On the administrative route, you have 2 years after all the proceedings, reviews, and appeals connected to the registrar's final order come to an end. On the civil route, you have no more than 2 years after the act itself, or from the date of occupancy. Miss the window, and the strongest claim in the world is worth nothing. The deadline doesn't care that you were right. So what do you do with this? Quick note first, this is general information, not legal advice. Statutes change, so verify the current version before you rely on any of it. Here's the practical order. Before you hire anyone, look them up. The ROC has a public license lookup. Confirm the license is active, in the right classification, and clean before a single dollar changes hands, because the fund only backs a properly licensed residential contractor. This one step, done before signing, is worth more than everything that comes after. Get it in writing and build the paper trail now. Because the fund doesn't pay what you lost, it pays actual damages, and it calculates that from evidence. That means a dated contract with a clear scope, a record of every payment and when you made it, and once things go wrong, written estimates for what it costs to finish and repair. That file is the difference between a number you can prove and a number you can only claim. Then, if the job goes bad, run the 3 doors in order. And here's the part people trip on. Door 2, the bond, isn't just file something. You need a final determination from the surety, the bond company's formal decision on your claim, before the fund will engage, because the fund sits behind the bond and subtracts whatever the bond pays. And Door 1 only counts if your ROC complaint actually lands the license in suspension or revocation, so file it fast and push it. And watch the clock the entire time. File the fund claim inside the 2-year window that fits your route. Doors out of order don't open, and a missed deadline closes all of them. So let's resolve that number we opened with. The reason you can win completely and still recover less than half isn't that Arizona's fund is broke. It's the opposite. This fund is funded, audited, solvent, actually paying. Unlike some states, when you get through the gauntlet, Arizona will genuinely cut the check. But funded is not the same as sufficient. $30,000 is a real backstop, and it sits far below the cost of most serious construction failures. A failed foundation, a botched re-roof, a gutted kitchen. It's a partial refund at the end of a 3-step process on a 2-year timer. It is not a safety net that catches your whole fall. which flips where the real protection lives. It isn't the fund waiting at the end. It's the 15 minutes you spend on that license lookup before you ever sign. The verification you do up front is worth more than the fund you might reach later. Because the fund, at best, gives back a capped fraction after a fight. Before the money leaves is the only place you have real leverage. Arizona caps this at $30,000 and runs it through that 3-door gauntlet. Cross the state line and the whole thing changes. Nevada's number is different, and so is the path to it. That's the next file we open. If you want the breakdown for your state, subscribe so we can hand it to you when it drops. And if you're standing at the start of a project right now, the single highest value move is the boring one. Pull up your state's contractor license lookup and verify before you sign. Do the verification. Keep the receipts. That's the research side of renovation on the Reno ledger.